G'day, guys. Well, I tell you what, the AFL, it's rude to call someone or something stupid, but season 2024 is exactly that. It's crazy. It's silly. It is impossible to predict. The teams that were good a month ago are sliding or no good, and the teams that were going terribly are all of a sudden going beautifully. It's hard to know what to expect from week to week. That's why a little while ago on this show, I said judge teams in boxes, windows. Have a look at teams' performances across 4 or 6 weeks. That's the only way you can try and judge things. Thanks to those who are tuning in for the first time. Thanks to those who are tuning in each and every week. We tried to just drop the episode on YouTube a little bit later in the week. Been finding that more of you had been engaging and watching the show when we were going live on sort of Wednesday night, perhaps even Thursday. I know there's a saturation of AFL content early in the week, particularly on Monday and Monday night. So we'll just hold off on our stuff here on the field a little bit and see whether that captures your attention. But this week, I want to have a look back, even though we are a little bit more removed from the games, but Carlton were up by 30 points. Then Port held them to 1 goal in the second half. A 5-day break, was that a factor? I wonder. Essendon simply had to avenge their home loss to the Crows. Did nothing of the sort. Dished up rot, R-O-T, from the Bombers. GWS and the Ds, no one saw it because no one was there, but they served up a bit of a classic at the MCG on a slippery Saturday night. The Dockers overcame a slow start in the Derby, and they are just creeping along beautifully, the Fremantle Dockers. Hand in the air. I've been slow to the party. I'm looking for a ticket to said party because Freo are going beautifully when a lot of teams around them are tripping over their own feet. The Doggies, they went north to the Harbour City and got the job done against Sydney. I called this game on radio for AFL Nation. This was as comprehensive, as dominant, and as deliberate as you'll ever see. Sydney have got problems all over the place. And a halftime margin of 15 points turned into a thumping, a belting of the Adelaide Crows as Hawthorn went boom, 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 kicked 10 goals in the second half. Had 8 players kick 2 goals in the game. I don't know when and if that's ever happened. 8 players kicked 2 goals. No one kicked more than 2, and 8 individuals from the Hawks kicked 2 goals. Absolutely stunning. What on earth can happen in round 21 to top round 20? Who knows? But let's have a look at some of the big talking points as we are somewhere in the middle of round 20 and round 21. The Q Clash was interesting. The better team won. The more dominant, the more composed, the more professional team won. And again, Cam Rayner keeps on chugging. His form is remarkable. A career-high 25 disposals. And I've said for quite some time, his stat sheet, his box score, if you will never tell the true story about his impact. But now the fact he's getting 20, 22, 25 disposals, he is simply airborne. He's among the most impactful players in the competition right at this point in time. He's kicked 11 goals across the past 5 weeks. He's kicked 2 or more goals in every game across the past handful of weeks. He's one of the more informed players in the competition. Brisbane are flying. He's flying. They were just simply too good for the Suns, too professional. They just had all bases covered. Their young players are firing. Their veterans are firing. And Eric Hipwood, I don't know whether we'll see Big Eric in defence long term, but certainly looked comfortable enough back there. Ben King took some marks and should have kicked some goals on him, but he looked pretty comfortable back there. He's certainly got the athletic ability to play as a key defender. He marks the ball quite nicely. Certainly forwards who seemingly don't mark the footy that well in the forward line, they often can go back and take really solid and consistent contested marks behind the footy. Often, they're able to run at the ball without that physicality coming from a forward like they would when they're a forward and they're getting defenders hanging off them and tugging them and trying to shift their body weight. So Eric Hipwood looks the goods, but I'd expect to see him back in the front half. The two rucks for Gold Coast, I said it before the game, so this is no hindsight hero work here. Ned Moyle and Jared Witts can't play in the same team. They're both AFL ruckmen. They're both very, very good players. Jared Witts has been a fine player, and Ned Moyle will be a fine player. I'm just fascinated to see which way Damien Hardwick goes late in the season. You probably have to stick with your co-captain, Jared Witts, but Ned Moyle, make no mistake, he is too good to be playing in the second grade footy. And if he does, even though he recently signed a contract, expect teams to come and ask the question because he is a long-term AFL ruckman. There's no doubt about that from my perspective. Let's talk about the Bombers. Now, I've been filling in for Andrew Gaze on the run home on SEN all week, so I've spoken about the Bombers ad nauseum with their fans, but it simply was awful. It simply was terrible from them. I don't know what to make of them. I don't know whether they've run out of steam. I don't know whether some of the young guys who have gone into the midfield and have really changed the dynamic for them perhaps have just come off 5%, whether some of the veteran players down back are certainly not playing to their absolute best, but they were hammered by St Kilda. They coughed up that heartbreaker that they never should have coughed up against Adelaide. They were out-muscled in the rain against Melbourne and never adjusted to the conditions. They did the job, big tick, against Collingwood on a Friday night, and they were hammered by Geelong. It's a pretty awful 5 weeks. It's 4 awful weeks and one solid workman, tradesman-like job in between. So it's not a really good block of footy for Essendon. They were a one-time potential top 4, even top 2 candidate. And right here, right now, they're going to be finding it difficult to make the top 8. And the last position of query for Essendon has to be in the ruck. Rowan Marshall handed Sam Draper his lunch. 26 disposals for the Big Saint, 10 marks, 8 clearances, kicked a goal, and Draper did next to nothing. He kicked a goal, but he only had the ball 9 times, only took the 3 marks, and Marshall won the hit-out count 30-23, which is a real worry because Draper's much bigger, much more athletic, much more physical in the ruck than Rowan Marshall. If he was going to win one area of that battle, that head-to-head contest, he had to be winning the hit-out count, but he couldn't. He didn't, and the Bombers got absolutely belted. I referenced the Giants and the D's, and the D's jumped out to a 27-point lead at quarter time. But the Giants are making a habit of being a little bit sporadic in games, a little bit topsy-turvy, but they've got some players who are just really beginning to emerge. I thought Peatling's efforts in that last quarter, 2 big-time tackles, and you'll only know what I'm talking about if you watch the game or if you barrack for the Giants. His efforts in the last quarter were superb. Finn Callaghan, a former top 10 draft pick, his move into the midfield has been big for the Giants. Callan Ward, the sacrificial lamb, he's gone out to the wing and he's still playing some pretty good footy. But Callaghan's one of the best young players in the competition that we really don't talk about. He had the ball 36 times. He's not a contested ball animal. He's not a clearance beast. He's not a silky skilled player in terms of, he's not a Josh Kelly type. He's not super fast. What he is and what he seems to be is very, very good in all facets of the game. So he can find the ball. He makes good decisions. He's composed. He doesn't get overawed. He kicks the ball quite neatly. He doesn't fumble very often, and he's got great size, so he can go against any opponent around clearance. I reckon his move into the midfield has been big for GWS, and I'd expect him to keep on doing his thing alongside Tom Green in the middle. And Jesse and Toby, I know I've been talking about them both. Jesse Hogan's past month has been absolutely mammoth. He's kicked 17 goals from his past handful of games. These two have kicked 21 between them, and Hogan's been marking the ball inside forward 50 better than any other key forward in the game. So Hogan's the big imposing aerial presence. Toby Green is the ground level general play, getting goals from different scenarios. He's that type, the yin and the yang about Jesse and Toby. Look out if you have to match up on those two guys. Quickly down to Tassie, where Geelong took care of the Kangaroos. No idea what Alistair Clarkson and the coaching group were doing with Tom Stewart. It's very, very evident and quite obvious what Stewart's doing. He's setting up as a defensive side midfielder. He's dropping out of that contest as soon as the stoppage has been played out. Even when the ball's bobbling around, he's backing out of those stoppages. It shouldn't be that hard for a high half forward for the opposition. So in North Melbourne's case on the weekend, to pick Tom Stewart up as he drops out of that contest and just allow the next Geelong player to be the spare. So Zach Guthrie's man or Zach Tui's man or Jack Henry's man, just go and stand on Tom Stewart as soon as he backs out of that stoppage and let your man be the spare, because any of those guys being the +1 is a better result for the Kangaroos and for any opposition for that matter than Tom Stewart. 32 touches. He intercepted the ball. He won clearance from time to time. It was an absolute roadblock for the Kangas. I'm not sure why they didn't have a better plan for him. It probably wouldn't have changed the outcome of the game, but it certainly would have helped because Tom Stewart was certainly one of the better players on the ground. Some love for a Kanga. Tristan Sherry, he got to be making a push for All-Australian ruck #1. 25 disposals, laid 8 more tackles, had 54 hitouts, if you don't mind. And Tyson Stengel, I know there's been some news about Tyson, and that's a pretty unfortunate situation. Hopefully he is okay. Certainly expect to hear some clarifying circumstances from the club at some stage. Not good. And, you know, very difficult for any of us to pass any judgment until we know all of the facts. I played footy with Tyson at Adelaide and Geelong. I was at Geelong when he was a player and I was a part-timer. And he's a great young man. He's a very cheeky young man. He doesn't say much, but when he does, certainly people listen. But hopefully this is a great lesson for him. Hopefully he can continue to make good decisions and be a great AFL player and certainly lead a great life at the same time. But he, on the field in that game, was superb, and he must be planting his hand firmly in the air for that forward pocket spot when it comes to the All-Australian team as well. Kicked another 3. He's got 37 on the season, the most of all smalls around the competition. If he ends up on around 43 to 45 goals, he probably goes in and gets a second All-Australian blazer. All the way back to Carlton and the power. Unbelievable from Carlton. Kicked 6 or 7 unanswered, looked absolutely off to the races, and then just basically stopped to a walk. Was it the 5-day break? Were Carlton slowing up because of a 5-day break? Now, we know they've got some injury issues. No Mackay and no Akers and no De Koning, 3 really important players. De Koning and Mackay would be 2 of their 5 most important players. And Akers, from a role/structural point of view, would be a very important player as well. His magnet would go up each and every week without discussion. Michael Voss and that coaching staff aren't worrying about whether Akers is going well enough to get a game. He plays the wing role so well. His magnet goes up every week. So 3 guys they really need back. Jack Martin's played plenty of footy in the VFL. They had a bye on the weekend, so he couldn't mount or stake a claim for a position. They need him in the team. I understand the Blues coaching staff and the selection committee are trying to force him to dominate at VFL level and put his hand up and demand a spot, but I think they need to find a way to get him back into the team, particularly whilst Tom De Koning is out of the team. But all credit to the power. They were really good. Their midfield is powerful. Ollie Wines has wound back the clock. I thought he was a potential trade target last year, but I tell you what, he has wound back the clock. He's forced some of these young guys out of the centre square, and his form has been superb. Picked up 10 coaches' votes, if you don't mind. And finally, well, almost finally, we've got a couple of things to get through first. Sydney and the Dogs, what about that? Now, Swans fans, I asked this question of Carlton fans last week. Are we nervous? Are we getting nervous? Because this is now a 4 or 5 week period where your form has been far from ideal. Luckily, you've built up such a run of form and a bank of wins that you're still 6 points ahead. So as the rest of the competition, bar a couple of teams down the bottom, are so condensed from second to about 12th, is so condensed, you are still 6 points ahead. You're still a game and a half ahead. You've still got superior percentage, and you've earned that. But you don't want to give that up. You've got some fatigue in stars. I reckon Brodie Grundy needs a rest. And this might sound strange because Isaac Heaney was suspended not that long ago. I reckon Heaney needs a week off to refresh and reset. I don't want to see him go forward. I don't think that's the answer. I understand Papley's not there. I understand the forward line might be struggling a little bit, but I think it's about supply versus demand. Understand that they demand the ball basically on a platter. They're not key forwards who are going to go and make it happen like a Jesse Hogan, but the supply needs to improve. The ball use, the skill level, the lack of cohesion on the weekend was stark for the Swans. They've been the best ball movement team in the competition, the high scoring team in the competition, and they were way, way off it. Chad Warner only had the ball a dozen times. They were smashed by the Dogs in round 11 in contested possession. 33 was the number. Well, it was another bashing on the weekend, plus 27. So the Dogs have completely humiliated Sydney's midfield around the ball, plus 60 in contested possession through 2 matchups during the season. And you can bet your bottom dollar, if these 2 teams meet again, from Sydney's perspective, those numbers have to go up on the bulletin board. They have to go up on the slideshow. We've been bashed by this team around the footy. And from the Dogs' perspective, if they were to meet the Swans in a final, you're putting that up and you're saying, well, that's fine. They can be up for the fight, but they can't match us. And we've proven that across 2 games, that when we hunt the footy with our midfield, with Treloar, with Bontempelli, with Ed Richards, with Liberatore, they can't go with us. And those numbers absolutely prove it. We know about what's going on down back. Rory Lobb, Liam Jones, and Buku Khamis, a very unlikely group of players, but gee, they look good in their first hit out together. All 3 are comfortable enough to defend one-on-one, but all 3 are very, very good at being a help defender. All 3 are very, very good at coming forward, punching a ball over the fence, coming forward and taking an intercept mark. The Dogs look good. Wasn't sure about them. I had them outside the 8 at the start of the season, but I'll tell you what, they are flying. And one man who was really flying, one man who was airborne, if you don't mind, Jamara Ugle-Hagan. He's the number 1 rated player in the AFL for goals across the past 3 weeks and score involvements. No one has had more score involvements than Jamara Ugle-Hagan. And that's a big number for a key forward, because traditionally the key forwards get the ball less. I understand they're in the forward 50 a lot of the time, so you'd expect a lot of their disposals to result in scores. But you think about some of these guys who are getting the ball 30, 33, 35 times, and the amount of opportunities they have to be involved in scores. No one has done it better than Jamara Ugle-Hagan over the past 3 weeks. He does it differently, and he does it, like Lance Franklin. He's not as good as Buddy, but he does it like Lance Franklin. He can get on the move. He can pick it up at ground level. He can be physical when he needs to. He can take an overhead mark when he needs to. And his ability to finish is getting a little bit better. Slowly but surely, his ability to finish is getting better and better. And Buddy Franklin was the same. He could spray them around with the absolute best of them, but particularly in his years as a Swan, he just got a little bit more reliable. And when he needed to kick a goal, he would kick a goal. So all things are coming up rosy for the boys from Footscray. Of course, they're called Footscray for round 21 when they meet the D's on Friday night. Of course, that game's on Channel 7, if you don't mind. Speaking of Channel 7, I jumped on the socials and put up a little video of Brent Daniels, who I think, of course, the GWS small forward, who I think is the most underrated player in the competition. His numbers stack up. He's rated elite for disposals, elite for score involvements, above average for score assists. He's a very neat and accurate kick. He's very creative. He makes Toby Green's job a lot easier. He makes Jesse Hogan's job easier. And I think, watching from afar, the Giants coaches have identified the need to get him involved. He doesn't play as a midfielder per se, but he certainly gets up around the ball a lot more than he has done in his first handful of seasons at AFL level. His body, touch wood, looks and feels good, and he hasn't been injured for quite some time. So Brent Daniels, in my opinion, is the most underrated player in the competition. Make sure you check out that video on the 7AFL socials on X and Instagram. If you think someone else is, make sure you leave a comment either on those socials or here on YouTube. Now, the Hawks, how far can the Hawks go? They're not in the 8 just yet. So Hawks fans who are reminding me, I picked them to finish 17th, and that certainly is going to be incorrect. But just hold off on the victory lap. You're not quite in the 8. You've got a very difficult game in Canberra against the Hawks this weekend. I think the Hawks are probably underdogs in that game. I think GWS would be expected to win the game. But I tell you what, if the Hawks keep winning, at some point, everyone's going to get real scared real quick. So can't wait to see that game. That's probably the game I'm most looking forward to in round 21. And from a Hawks point of view, we understand where the flourishment has come from, where the flourishing performances have come from, that large group of running, creative forward / midfielders. The midfield's going well. Lloyd Meek's going well in the ruck. But you look at both ends of the ground, the bookends. So Sam Frost and Jack Scrimshaw, both somewhat undersized. Both have had issues with form at different stages. Frost, in particular, but Scrimshaw's an emerging player. And then in the front half, it's been Kel Shadir and Mabior Chol. Now, I'll put my hand up. I didn't think Mabior Chol could last as a number one key forward, the focal point of a key forward line. But I tell you what, his season has been quite remarkable. Hopefully he finishes high up in the Hawthorn best and fairest, because he has done a stellar job, a splendid job for the Hawks. Now, Coach of the Year. It's not something we pay a lot of attention to. It's given out late in the year, and I don't necessarily see much hoo-ha made of the award. But the contenders, one's got to be the Hawthorn coach, Sam Mitchell, from 0-5 to absolutely rolling, absolutely dangerous, with some key personnel down, as I mentioned, and still some holes in the squad from what I can see. They're 11-8 on the back of a zip and 5 start. They probably should be 12-7 if they hadn't coughed up that win in Adelaide. So 11 wins from 14 games. If they can make the finals, what a performance that would be. What a coaching effort that would be from Sam Mitchell. And I just want to talk about Sam Mitchell in regards to the way the Hawks young guys are being quite boisterous and brash, and there's bravado, and they're doing selfies when they're kicking goals, and the TikTok stuff's going off. Deep down, and now I don't know Sam Mitchell at all. Deep down, I reckon Sam Mitchell would come from the point of view where he'd say, I don't love it. I don't like it. You put yourself out there. What's the point? Let's just compete. Let's just win games of footy. But I think Sam Mitchell is so intelligent that he understands this is the way forward. These young guys are receptive to this. If I give them a little bit, they'll give me plenty in return. I think he just gets it. I think he understands these young guys. It doesn't affect their performance negatively. Look, they might have a down game, and some people might criticize them and some people might ridicule them, but I think he knows it doesn't have an impact. Once upon a time, we thought, well, this stuff has an impact. It fires up the opposition. It does this. It does that. It makes yourself a lightning rod for criticism. But I think Sam Mitchell just gets it, and his players are certainly feeling it. So he's a contender. Chris Fagan from Brisbane is absolutely a contender. So from a grand final to a pretty tumultuous off-season to zip and 3 to is this man the man moving forward. Now they're outright second on the AFL ladder, and I think personally they're the number one seed. Now, I've thought Sydney and Carlton have been the equal number ones for quite some time, but proof is in the recent pudding. Brisbane look the best team in it. They've won 8 in a row. They've come from absolutely nowhere, and there's some chance, well, a very good chance they'll finish top 2 and get a home qualifying final. Is anyone going to want to go and see him? So Chris Fagan, been ridiculed and been queried and prodded about whether he's a great coach or whether he's the thing holding them back. He has done a sensational job. He's blooded players by force. He's had to bring some players in, and they've stood up, but they've been coached incredibly well. All the moves that have needed to be made have been made, and I can't give him enough credit. And then the Longies, John Longmire and Justin Longmuir, even in an even season. And this is why I think John Longmire, Horse, is still in the hunt for Coach of the Year. The Swans are 6 points ahead of anyone else. It's the most even and unpredictable season we can ever recall. And despite a real dip in form for them, they're a game and a half clear. They're percentage points clear of everyone else. And their best has been easily the best across the competition. Now, clearly with a month to go and some finals to be played, there's more to play out. But he absolutely has to be in the mix for Coach of the Year, as does Justin Longmuir. I knew I wouldn't get through that by saying Longmire and Longmuir without a hiccup. But they're top 4 contenders, Freo. Almost everyone aside from Brisbane is tripping over, and the Dockers are doing what they need to do. Occasionally, they're not sexy. The Derby win over West Coast was just gritty and workmanlike, but they got the job done. And they too are staring at certainly playing off in a qualifying final, but it's not out of the possibility for them to host a qualifying final. I'm not sure you want to go and see Fremantle in Perth in a qualifying final with 50,000 of the Purple Haze, the Purple Army in the house. And if they make a qualifying final in Perth, gives them the absolute inside running on a berth in a grand final. We know what it means for Sydney. We know what it means for Brisbane to get those 2 home finals if they can secure them. Well, it means the exact same for the Fremantle Dockers. So they're my Coach of the Year candidates. No one else really in the mix. You tell me, have I left someone out? Sam Mitchell, Chris Fagan, John Longmire, or Justin Longmuir? Is there someone else? Make sure you leave a comment and let me know. Time to get out of here. I'm sitting down on a Tuesday night. We're going to release on Wednesday-ish. I'm getting ready to watch the Boomers versus Canada. Fingers crossed by the time you're watching this, we've beaten them and we're absolutely on our way. Congrats to Scott Pendlebury. Game 400. What an achievement. The most consistent player I think that's ever played the game. Unbelievable player he is. Dogs and D's, Footscray back in action on Friday night footy. Can't wait for it. We've got Sydney and Port. We've got GWS and Hawthorn, Essendon and Fremantle at the MCG. The first time I think those 2 teams have played at the G since 1999, if you don't mind. The Thumpers and the Blockbusters keep on coming. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you have subscribed. Make sure you like and share and all that fun stuff. Be a friend, tell a friend, to quote Pat McAfee, and we'll catch you next week.